All right, Mark here, cooking the books. So I put up a video where I was talking about this is, I'm going to continue content, satisfaction, and probability. And the reason, again, content and satisfaction, I mean it in the sense of just being happy with where you are in life and what you're doing in life and what you have in life. Where you are is your position, what you're doing is your momentum, your motion, and what you have, whatever you have acquired. And I emphasize this because a lot of us, especially in these pandemic times, a lot of people are losing jobs. A lot of people are losing loved ones. A lot of people, we're losing a lot. Let's just summarize, in summation, a lot of people are losing a lot. So for those of us who are fortunately haven't lost a loved one, for instance, it's just a time to just be thankful for whatever you have. Okay, and I made mention of this. The little that you have is a lot to someone else. I'll say that again. The little you have, what you considered, what you might pine about, right? In terms of what you want, but what you have, right? There might be a discrepancy between what you want and what you have. And sometimes your wants can masquerade and disguise themselves as your needs. You don't necessarily need them, but you want them so bad they take on the form of a need. But they're just wants. So it's important to distinguish the two, one, and then two, just be happy with whatever little you have in these times, especially in these times. You should be happy nonetheless, but especially in these times. And now, having said that, it doesn't mean that I'm saying that you should not be ambitious. It's not to say that you should not have aspirations. It's not to say that you should not have your goals, your dreams, your desires. We're not, in no way, shape, or form is that the kind of message I want to convey. But with the anxiety levels that are increasing right now, and so much going on in the world, and so many people are out of work. Unemployment rates are starting to move up. We see this on the economic scales. So it's just very important right now to put things in perspective and just understand that you ought to be happy with the little that you have. Be content and be satisfied with your position and your momentum. Notice I use those words positions and momentum intentionally. Let me tell you why. As I made mention before, I in this quarantine time, I've been using it wisely. I've been spending a lot of time studying, scholastically researching the quanta universe, the quanta realms, and want to just kind of touch on Schrodinger's equation. Within that, you find something called the wave function. Function is just an expression, a mathematical formula. The wave is what particles behave as when they're not being observed, and so wave function is pretty much a formula to describe the probability of locating these particles when they're not being observed. Now that might sound like a mouthful, but I'll try to connect it and tie it into you and to me. First of all, when you think about, let me just give you a backdrop just a little bit. Quantum mechanics takes up and picks up where Newtonian or classical physics stopped. I'll say it again. Classical physics stopped at particles being solid. Quantum mechanics picked up where Newtonian physics ended and expounded more. And not only expounded, actually revolutionized the entire concept, turned the community upside down by showing that uh, particles are not solid, as Newtonian physics taught. They're not solid at all. They can be broken down further to subatomic elements. Newtonian physics kind of stopped at the atomic elements. Quantum goes into the subatomic. In the subatomic, you find the constituents are particle are protons, electrons, neutrons, quarks, bosons. These are considered force carriers. So breaking down an atom, you find out that an atom is broken down to its basic and purest form, its energy. And this is where the quantum world comes in, and they call these energies particles. And they found out they're not solid at all. Rather, they're malleable, they're flexible, and they're liquid. That is their state. Uh, I say all that to say this, that if put it like this, why I love this stuff and why it fascinates me is because I find myself in it. I find my life. I find you. I find everybody. I find the whole universe. I find all of us. I find the world in it, and I see how it can. I also have the mental prowess to be able to make it applicable, to literally apply it to your life, and how you are to move. Right, your decision making process, your choices, everything, how how you can measure the consequences of your choices, right? Which is determinism. And then to balance out determinism, you have stochastic, right? Or stochasticity, which simply means unpredictability, randomness of life, right? So you have stochastic and you have deterministic models, and both can be, you can see how they're balanced. They're both balanced. They balance the universe. They balance out you and I. So put it like this: if you were somehow able to get into a spaceship and you went thousands and went into the ionosphere, and you go into the different stratospheres, you go way up into space or whatever, you look down on the earth would just look like a little marble, a blue marble, and you and I would become those particles, right? Because right now, if you get certain special devices, microscopes or whatever, you can study the atom. You can break the atom down, and see the particles that makes up the atom, right? Which is the quantum universe, the quantum realm. So that's from my perspective, from my vantage point. But if you were in space looking down at me, I would be that particle. You see what I'm saying? I would be no different than the particle that Einstein studied, the particle that Erwin Schrödinger studied, Max Planck studied, Thomas Young studied, Niels Bohr studied, all these great minds. I would be no different than those microscopic subatomic particles. You and I are nothing more, nothing less than subatomic particles. It's all about your frame of reference, right? So if you're sitting across from me like this, we're macro, right? We're macro. Macro just means large, right? If you go into space and look down, you and I become micro. We become subatomic. We become those particles. So when you think of it like that, you realize, so studying these particles, now you learn about yourself, because you and I are just energy, but we're considered macro energy, whereas the particles are microscopic energy or subatomic energy. So when you learn about those, you're actually learning about yourself, right? Because those subatomic energies or particles govern, right? They govern, they manipulate, they control, they dictate everything in the universe. Everything, all things, you, me, the chair that I'm sitting on, the table, everything is governed by these force carriers. So it's important to understand them, and then you have a better understanding of your role within the universe, right? It's not just biological, it's deeper than biology, right? It crushes biology. Evolution has nothing on this stuff. So I just want to say that it's so important, vitally important, that we understand why we ought to be, again, very thankful, very grateful. And I don't want to lose my train of thought. Like I said, I use the word position and momentum. Position and momentum, the reason why I use those two words is because those are two what's called variables when you're trying to, when you're studying the wave function and you're trying to find the location of the particle. You study what's called momentum and you look for the position. And if you divide position by the momentum, you get velocity, right? So you get the velocity by dividing the position by the momentum, you get the velocity of an object or of a particle. And that's sciency, right? Sciency, if that's a word. I don't know if I could say that, but that's science, right? That's the scientific aspect. The practical aspect is this, right? When you solve Schrodinger's equation, when you get the solution, it gives you the probability. It doesn't give you the precision or the accuracy, because Heisenberg, I believe that's his name, Heisenberg in 1927 proved the uncertainty of locating the exact, specific, and precise and concise location of the element, which is the particle. It's called the uncertainty principle. You can look that stuff up. It just pretty much states that there's no way you can get the exact location of the particle, right? What you can get is it's the probability. It's called the probability density. Probability density is a calculation of the finding the area, right? Or finding the it's yeah, it's a calculation of the area in which you can locate it. No, let me rephrase that. It's the probability density is the calculation of the area in which you have the probability of locating the particle. So you can never find it exactly, but you can get a greater probability, right? That probability has what's called a value or a parameter, which simply means it's an average, a number, a percentage. There's a 30% probability you'll locate the particle here. There's a 50% probability you locate the particle here. That probability is tied to what's called the initial conditions. The initial conditions are what you would determine whether the probability is high or low to find that particle. Then there's also the aspect of evolution in time, evolving over time. So which means where will the particle be? Where the particle is 5 years from hence, will it be here 10 years from hence? Where will it be 20 years from hence? Now, all this stuff, again, it's sciencey, but why am I saying this? Here's why. Position can be translated, right? No, particle can be translated person. Go listen to the video again. I just told you 2 minutes ago. If you go up in space and you look down on Earth, you and I are nothing but particles. We're literally subatomic particles, you and I. So it's perspective, okay? It's the vantage point in which, or the prism in which you look at what I'm telling you from. So try to expand and see it from a different perspective here. Particle can be translated person. You stay with me and it'll all make sense. Position of the particle, momentum of the particle, divide that, you get the velocity. All that can be translated in our lives and metaphorically applied. Here's the metaphorical or the allegorical application. Allegorically, the particle represents me or you. Position, which is a variable used in the equation of the wave function. Position can be translated your plight, your state. What have you become in life? What office do you hold? What is your position on your job? What is your position in school? What is your position in relationships? Yep. So position can be translated your state in life. What state are you in? Are you in a bad state, a good state, indifferent state? Are you homeless? Are you doing hard time in prison? Are you a successful entrepreneur? Do you own your own? You see what I'm sure you follow where I'm going. Next, momentum. Momentum in terms of the wave function is a detection of the unknown. No, wait a minute. Let me not confuse myself. That's not momentum. Momentum is motion, right? Momentum is the actual motion. It's the force. It's the force in which you're moving. So momentum can be translated motion. What are you doing? You see what I'm saying? What are you doing? So position is your state. Where are you located in life? Momentum is what are you doing? It's motion. What are you doing? This is translating. This is looking at it metaphorically. This is how you can apply the science to you right now. Okay, so what's your position in life? Where are you located? Right? Like I said, are you in prison? Are you homeless? Are you where did the particle end up? And again, they measure the evolving over time of the particle. How does the particle evolve over time? There's mathematical formulas to actually identify the probability of the evolution of the particle. Have you evolved? Where in 20 years, where are you? In the last, going back from high school till today, what have you accomplished? How have you evolved? Have you become a better person, a more socially conscious and aware and responsible human being? Or are you adding to your society or in a positive way, or are you taking away from your society in a negative way? right? This is all in the Schrodinger's equation. By finding the probabilities of the particle, you get the probabilities for everything, right? Probability for the position, probability for the momentum, probability for the outcomes, right? So position, momentum, those two variables again, translated your location and what are you doing. And this all is embedded in the wave function, which is the probability of locating or finding the particle. And in finding the particle, you'll be finding what is the particle doing. It's a probability. Again, it's not a definite, it's a probability. So when you apply that to your life, you got to ask yourself, what are you doing? Where are you located? What over time, how have you evolved? Are you the same person? Are you doing the same things today that you were doing 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago? Have you not evolved? Have you stagnated? Right? All probabilities, right? Everything is probability. So this is why I said in the last video when I spoke on this, it was a little short. I said, I want to emphasize this too. At the end of this, I want to say this. The word suppose is a very, let me break this down real quick for you. Suppose or presuppose or a supposition is another word. It's another way of saying assume. When you suppose something, you're assuming something, right? When you suppose something to be, you're pretty much claiming truth of something without basis, without having any conclusive evidence or a solid basis. The word suppose means to assume something to be true or accept something as fact without having any real evidence to the claim, right? So suppose is also a synonym for assume. And when there's an old saying, when you assume, you make a what of yourself, right? The reason why I'm throwing this in there is because we gotta understand we've been cultured to have an entitlement mentality, right? We feel entitled, right? The Constitution said if you're born in this country, you have a right to this, that, and that, right? There are some amendments. There are things embedded in the democracy of the whole setup that has created an entitlement psychology. And again, I'm not knocking that. Nothing is wrong with that, but everything needs to be reined in. Everything needs to be checked and balanced, which is also in the Constitution, right? The reason I bring that up is to say this. You hear people always saying you're supposed to have this, you're supposed to do this, we're supposed to have this. You're not supposed to have shit. I'm sorry. You're not supposed to have anything. You were born into the world naked. Just let that sink in for a second. When you came out the womb, you didn't come out with a house, you didn't come out with a car, you didn't come out with a job, a career, a wife, a girlfriend, a boyfriend. You came out buck naked. And when you leave, you're going to leave buck naked. That's the book of Job. That's biblical. Okay. I got theology in here, got science in here. I'm going all over the place with this, but I want you to get this and get this well. So we have been cultured to have this entitlement mentality, and it's not a bad thing. Entitlement makes you work hard. It motivates you, right? You feel entitled to certain things. So it's a drive, and it's a healthy drive. I'm not knocking that, but here's what I want you to understand. Remember, the title of this video is to be content and be satisfied. Entitlement doesn't jive with that. You understand what I'm saying? The culture that we've been cultivated in the psychology of entitlement that we've been cultured in does not jive with satisfaction and content. Satisfaction and content are like arch nemesis to entitlement. Entitlement psychology will take out guns blazing at content and satisfaction and gun them down in the street. You know what I'm saying? That psychology, what? I'm entitled to this. It brings an aggression, like I deserve it. Doesn't jive with content and satisfaction. So I have to kind of square the circle here and let you understand that no, you're not entitled to nothing. Nothing. You are socially constructed and engineered to believe that, but the truth is you're not entitled to nothing. You're not supposed to have nothing. You came with nothing. So there's no, no, that is a fallacy. It is a convenient truth. Convenient, not necessarily truth, but it's a convenient truth. But it's not necessarily truth. It's a convenient truth. And again, you have to understand that this is how you kind of destruct and bring yourself to stabilization and balance and understand that, listen, you're not supposed to have, no, supposing is an assumption that this is a fact, that this is a truth, but there's no evidence, there's no basis. And here is what we use as data for evidence, for the supposition, for the assumption, right? So that we can believe in the subconscious of the mind that it is true. We look at what others have. You see what I'm saying? We judge ourselves based off those around us. Others have this, therefore I should have it. Others have that, therefore I should. Others live it, others do that. That's not, again, fallacy, false, erroneous, and incorrect reasoning. Right? It's upside down reasoning. That's not, that evidence does not justify an entitlement or I'm supposed to have this attitude. The reality is, they have think tanks. They have statistical statisticians statistical statisticians who actually study, research, and do the numbers, and they actually have a percentage of which is back to probability that you're going to die at this age, right? Based off the mean. The mean is the average of the population. So the income mean is this. If this is the average income, the poverty rate is this. If this is the poverty rate, the crime rate should be this. Again, all probabilities. If the crime rate is this, the income rate is this, then the death rate should be this. And this, all of these samples or parameters rather are for, they all vary, they all variable and differ depending on the geographical location. So this is for Brooklyn percentage, this is for Queens, within Queens, this is for Jamaica Queens, within Jamaica Queens, this is for Sufton Boulevard, within Sufton Boulevard, this is for Lakewood. You get the gist what I'm saying. So they have this thing broken down where they have like all the numbers of probabilities of who should live and who should die, who should have a house, who should live in the projects, who should have a car, who should take the bus. It's all been mapped out. It's all on a graph, okay? It's called, what is it? Parameters of the population, right? Or population parameters, right? So it's all drafted out already. Insurance companies do it, car companies do it, because car companies, they're going to insure your vehicle. So they want to look at, okay, this is a teenager, or no, this is a college student. The chance of them drinking, having car accidents is this, and they determine your premium, which is what you're going to pay into their insurance pool based off these statistics, these statistical statisticians, that the report that they give them, right? So it's all, again, appreciate what you have, folks. The little you have, be so thankful for it, be grateful for it, and be anxious for nothing and patience with everything. Peace.